إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الصراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم إلى قيامة يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، يا غريب كربلاء، رزقنا الله في الدنيا زيارتكم وشفاعتكم في الدنيا وفي القبر وفي الآخرة. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه وقرآنه المجيد وقوله الحق: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من يصلي على محمد وآل محمد. So have another loud salawat in honor of baby Fatima. Salawatullah salamu alayha. Respected brothers and sisters, salamu alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The discussion tonight will be concerning the 33rd ayah of the 33rd surah. Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah number 33, does not need any introduction amongst many of our crowds. It does, however, need introduction to those who are outside of our school of thought. Namely, in that there are many misconceptions, doubts, and some questions, open and sincere questions that come to mind when the average reader reads this ayah. And this is not just the non-Shia within Islam, this is also for the non-Shia outside of Islam. And so I want to, inshallah, tonight take a look at a few of the companions, a few of the wives, and a few of the members of the Ahlul-bayt, salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'een, that we have understood them to be. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we read, of course, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. And here we obviously see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being exclusive in His irada. We'll come back to in a little bit to what does exactly irada mean, as opposed to other words of the Arabic language. And does this intention actually get carried out? Number two, we also want to see what is the status of this type of infallibility that's being imparted in ayah number 33 of Surah Al-Ahzab. Because there are different kinds of infallibility. And we'll start off with a quick question that maybe some of us have had, maybe when we were growing up, maybe our parents didn't have answers for us, maybe they did. For those of you who did, you're lucky, because some of us never got those answers. Inshallah, tonight I intend to answer this question, which is, even from a Shia perspective, if you say that this ayah is about who? Ahlul Kisa, not necessarily all of Ahlul-bayt, where can we find a justification to say that the rest of the 9 Imams also are being mentioned over here in this ayah of 33:33? The answer comes in 2 parts tonight. Number 1, from a hadith from the Prophet and a hadith from Imam Sadiq. The hadith from the Prophet says to Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he asks about this ayah has now come, and it's come after multiple instances of the event of the cloak. See, what many of us don't know is that sometimes these events in the Prophet's seerah happened multiple times. They're not necessarily contradictions. When they have multiple sahih sanads, they happen multiple times. For example, Hadith al-Kisa, does it happen in the house of Salama? Does it happen in the house of Aisha? Or does it happen in the house of Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha? Here, we find that the answer is, well, why do we need to choose one? Why can't it be multiple? I'll give you an example. With regards to a hadith from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, with regards to the event of Ghadir. In the event of Ghadir, Rasulullah has now left from Hajjatul Wida, Mecca, and he's going towards Medina. Everybody else is going their own disparate ways. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, remember, 8 days away from Ghadir Khum. Hajj ends on the 10th, that's Eid al-Adha. 18th of Dhul Hijjah is Ghadir Khum. He's 8 days away, and from the time he's in Mecca, according to this hadith of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, which we can find in the Ihtijaj of one of our grand scholars, this is a reputable book. This is not just, some book that we found lying on the middle of the street and we're like, hey, let's see what this has to say, and then, it happens to support us. No. What Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says over here is Rasulullah was waiting for Jibreel to come down and give him the ijazah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that now is the time, this is the time and place, announce the leadership of Imam Ali alayhi salam. The problem is, Rasulullah is looking for a specific guarantee. He says, Jibreel, my brother, do I have isma from the people? He says, Ya ayyuha Rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. He says, okay, but do I have isma? Says, Allah has not said that. That's at Mecca. Many stops later, right? A couple of times between Mecca and Ghadir, Rasulullah stops. Until finally, on the 18th, Jibreel comes down again. This time he says that Allah, يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك يا أيها الرسول بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك وإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالتك والله يعصمك من الناس. You do have isma now. You have the protection of the divine. And then Allah ends off the ayah by saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْكَافِرِينَ. So, he goes and makes his announcement. We know what the announcement is. The point that I wanted to make is this happens multiple times where he's asking for isma before it finally comes. According to my analysis, my humble analysis, it seems that Rasulullah was trying to preempt the revelation and the descent of the ayat of Tathir. How? One time he's going to go to the house of Salama and he's going to get, as Salama says, the prayer mat in their house that they would use when they're praying inside the house. Rasulullah took that, put it over the 5, Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, puts it over the 5, and then he just makes a simple statement plus a dua. Allahumma inna ha'ulai Ahlul-bayti wa khassati. Right? And then he says, basically to the extent of, so therefore protect them, and they are from me, I am from them. Salama then asks a very interesting question, and we find this in the Sunni sources as well. That Salama says, Ya Rasulullah, you said, Inna ha'ula'i Ahlul-bayt. Can I also come in and join? He says, you stay in your place, for you are on a good path. In another hadith, also attributed to Salama, different Sunni book, says that Salama, when she asks, he says, stay away from my Ahlul-bayt. This is going to be something we're going to come back to when we're going to ask the question, are the wives part of this ayah and part of Ahlul-bayt? This one already is giving us a strong indication one way, not the other. Then we move on to the house of Aisha, where again, Rasulullah does something of this nature. He goes, puts them all under a cloak, makes the same kind of statement. Aisha now comes, can I come inside the cloak? And we find, stay away from my Ahlul-bayt, no, don't, right? Doesn't say the same thing that he says to Salama. Stay where you are in a good place, which is interesting. If he does say, and it's found to be authentic, stay away from my Ahlul-bayt, maybe that one has a weakness because the original one wasn't towards Salama. Why would Rasulullah need to go and tell Salama, stay away from my Ahlul-bayt? But maybe it's a warning when he says it to the other wife. And Allahu A'lam. But anyway, then he comes into the house of Fatima Zahra. And Salama says that morning, Fatima Zahra had cooked a bowl of porridge, in her grinder. And she had put it out for the family, invited her father over. Father comes and says, I find some weakness in my body. She says, God protects you from such weaknesses, Father. He says, bring me the Yamani cloak. Once he's sat down and situated under the cloak, her son Hassan comes in and says, I smell the likeness of my grandfather. She says, yes, he's under the cloak. He asks for permission, enters. Hussein comes, asks, enters. Imam Ali asks, enters. Fatima Zahra asks, enters. Jibreel now, this is different from the before ones, asks and enters. Everybody's asking and entering. There isn't just one, put them all under one cloak and make a statement. This one is different. This one is inside the house of Nubuwah. Now that he's done this, he takes the cloak by his, the Tarafay al-Kisa, and he goes and makes the dua to Allah with his left hand, that these are my Ahlul-bayt, lahmuhum lahmi wa damuhum dami, yu'limuni ma yu'limuhum, etc., till the end of the part of Rasulullah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his part is also mentioned in Hadith al-Kisa, that I didn't create, etc., except for the love of these five. Jibreel asks, can I come down? He comes down, and the hadith finishes. We want to see afterwards, Imam Ali alayhi salam asks, Ya Rasulullah, who is this about? Now, of course, he knows who's it about. But he wants the proof to come from Rasulullah's mouth so that we have satisfaction in our proofs and we can show this, that look, at least in our sources, this is found. What does it say? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, this is about you, your wife, my daughter, Fatima Zahra, the two grandsons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, and after Imam Hussein, Imam Ali ibn Hussein, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir, Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kazim, Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad, Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi, Hassan ibn Ali al-Askari, and the final, the holy proof of Allah on the earth, who will have a long occultation, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Qa'im, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. This is our first proof. The second proof comes from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says that this ayah is definitely about the Ahlul-bayt. They say, how? He says, we already know anybody who comes and doubts that this is about the purified five, they don't know what they're talking about. As for the other 9, we can look at the interpretation of the following ayah, which is Surah Al-Anfal, verse number 75, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the following statement. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِن بَعْدُ وَهَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا مَعَكُمْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مِنْكُمْ وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَىٰ بِبَعْضٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Here, we see that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam makes a reference to this, and when he says that the interpretation of this gives credence to the 9 Imams following, we have to understand why exactly that's the case. It says, yes, the believers are from you. They are the ummah. We, at the end of the day, may not be directly descended from Rasulullah. Some of us may be, some of us may not be. But regardless, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. The mu'mineen are one, therefore make reparations between the believers. That's fine. They are from Rasulullah and his Ahlul-bayt. But وَأُولِي الْأَرْحَامِ, the people who are related through the link of Arham, the wombs. Whose wombs? From Abdul Muttalib into Abu Talib and Abdullah, Rasulullah and Imam Ali. I seem to remember having this conversation 4 nights ago when it came to genetics. Ulul Arham, Quran is making the same exact argument we were making 4 nights ago in our first lecture of this series. Is infallibility hereditary? I saved this one for tonight because we want to see what Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam has to say about the ayah of Tathir. Surah number 8, Surah Anfal, ayah number 75 clearly says, وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامِ what? بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ. Some of them are more worthy than others fi kitabillah, in regards to what? In regards to inheriting. Right? They're more entitled to inherit fi kitabillah. This is also something that we see in some renditions of the khutbah of Fadakiyah, where Fatima Zahra says, Ulul Arham. Why do we not have the right to inherit? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, what is inherited over here from 33:33? You tell me. What is 33 even talking about? إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ. That we are purifying you from all sin. We are giving you isma. We are giving you infallibility. Now this infallibility will go through ulul arham in the genes of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Then we see from the beginning of Ahlul-bayt, we want to see in our discussions with our brothers and sisters, did Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, because of course to them, he's the forthrightly guided Khalifa, did he ever use this ayah to substantiate his position? I'll give you 3 mawaqi'at, right? 3 different situations, 3 different events, where Imam Ali alayhi salam makes reference to this ayah and says, this is about me. First one is related to us by Shaykh al-Tusi. He gets it from his chain going back to Imam Rida alayhi salam. From Imam Rida alayhi salam, just like Silsilat al-Dhahabiyya the other day, he goes to his father Musa ibn Ja'far, to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, to Imam al-Baqir, to Imam al-Sajjad. Imam al-Sajjad says that my grandfather Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, when he was in the house, his house, and Fatima Zahra was also in the house, you know which event I'm talking about. Umar ibn Khattab comes and says, give bay'ah. He says, you ask us, the people who are purified by God in the book of God, to come and give bay'ah to someone other than us when we are awla for it, like Surah Al-Anfal said. That's the first one. The second one, we find that one from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and this is narrated in the book, in the tafsir of Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi. What does he say? Says Imam Ali alayhi salam once approaches Abu Bakr. This is a little bit after the Khilafah, everything has kind of died down. This is within the 2 years, but he comes to Abu Bakr and he asks a question, which is really odd if you're reading it from the other school of thought, with that mindset. What does Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen say to Abu Bakr? He says, do you even read the book of God? He says, yes, I do. He says, hasn't it been said in the book of God, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا? He says, yes, it does say that. He says, who is it other than us? He said, no, it is about you. So, Imam Ali alayhi salam, at least in 3 different situations, says that this ayah definitely belongs to him. He's part and parcel of it. You can't separate him from it. Who else? We see that, for example, Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha, in Khutbah Fadakiyah. After a little bit of back and forth, I'm not going to have enough time to really go into the intricacies of Khutbah Fadakiyah, but it really is a interesting read, and I encourage all of us to go home and read it tonight. Where Fatima Zahra is going back and forth in argument with Umar bin Khattab, that you are a liar when you say that we do not inherit our father, but you do in the book of Allah. You're a liar when you say, etc., etc., etc. Umar bin Khattab actually says, yes, actually, if you try to make that claim about Ayat al-Tathir, that the Ahlul-bayt are somewhat different than the rest of people, you are wrong, you are a liar. Who's a liar? As-Siddiqat al-Kubra, Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha. This is how you talk to the Prophet's daughter? Says, not only are you wrong, we might even whip you if you continue making this claim. Fatima al-Zahra immediately says, you are a liar and you have exposed how base-born you are. This is only your fake bravery, which never really comes out. This is all that it is. You are not telling the truth. And actually, you have given grounds for your excommunication from the religion. Why? Because if you dare to say that someone who, because you've acknowledged that we are the Ahlul-bayt in Surah 33, Ayah 33, Allah has gotten rid of all rijs from us. How dare you call us liars? By calling us liars, you're saying that Allah didn't do what He said He would do, and you have called Allah and the book of Allah a lie. You have just opened the floodgates for people to question your iman. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Then we see, for example, Imam Hassan alayhi salam make multiple arguments against Muawiyah, against people who Muawiyah would bring to Hajj. And he would say, how dare you talk to someone like me from the household of the Prophet and accuse me of things when you have things going on in your own household that you need to straighten out first. One of those companions comes and says, you and your father, you are the likes of this, you are the likes of that. He says, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam al-Mujtaba, says to that person, Ya hada, I'm surprised that you are even over here in the tent with the men. Shouldn't you be going and worrying about what you saw your wife doing with another man? Imam Hassan alayhi salam has no filter when you come and you attack Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib and him. When you're in the presence of Muawiyah, when you've been given money, go and attack Hassan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba. No, Imam Hassan doesn't pull back his punches. People have this idea that Ahlul-bayt, they're so rosy, they're so nice, always a smile on their face. When you have someone trying to poison you, you're going to be like, thank you so much. Yeah. No, fight fire with fire. You tell them how it is, right? Others, for example, say that, you are a horrible person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curses you in the Quran. He says, I'm not surprised that you have a problem with the Quran because your father was called out in the Quran. And I'm not surprised that you don't like my father because my father caught your father drinking and he whipped him. So I'm not surprised that you don't like Ali ibn Abi Talib, and I'm not surprised that you don't like me because I'm telling you how it is. Imam Hassan alayhi salam clearly uses ayat al-tathir in his munadharat, in his debates. That's no problem. Imam Rida alayhi salam, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Let's have another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Says that in one of the munadharat that Ma'mun had arranged, he brings many of the fuqaha of Iraq and Iran, says, embarrass this guy, embarrass Imam Rida alayhi salam. So they go and ask him the following, that who is the inheritance of the Prophet? They were talking about Fadak, it seems, that who is the inheritance of the Prophet for? And this is part of a long debate, I'm only quoting the relevant parts because we don't have much time. The inheritance of the Prophet is specified for the immaculate household, and no others have a share in it. This is only possible, by the way, if genetics are being talked about, right? The inheritance of the Prophet is in that infallibility. Otherwise, other people do inherit from the Prophet. We can clearly go and just prove Imam Rida wrong. Other people did inherit from the Prophet. No. Something was special, and it was only inherited from the Prophet by the immaculate, infallible household of Rasulullah. What was that? It was this message and the infallibility that comes along with it. So then, Ma'mun asks, who are these household members who are immaculate? Imam al-Rida, salamullahi alayha, answers that they are those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically mentions in his book, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. So now moving on from the Ahlul-bayt, we're going to move on quickly to a few of the companions who have mentioned this ayah in reference to Ahlul-bayt, proving even from the Sahaba school of thought that the Sahaba view this to be as mentioning Ahlul-bayt in the Quran. What do they say? And not just Ahlul-bayt, the Ahlul-bayt. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, father of Umar ibn Sa'ad, la'natullah alayh, says, once I was at Hajj, I was in my tent, Muawiyah comes and visits me. Says, Sa'ad, we're getting some reports we're not so happy about. What is it? Well, you're not really cursing Abu Turab. Everybody else is. Why won't you? Says, because there are 3 things that he got. If I got it, I would have been happy for the rest of my life if I got even one of those. One of those, I'm not going to go into all 3, we don't have time, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed about him and the wife that he got, that every one of us wanted to marry that wife. Him, his wife, his 2 kids were under the same cloak as Rasulullah when the ayah came, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. This is why I will never curse Imam Ali alayhi salam. So Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas is one of the companions. No one can deny he's a companion. And in fact, he's a respected companion, not to us necessarily, but at least to other schools of thought. The next one is going to be Anas ibn Malik, who, as we'll see in tonight's Musibah portion, when Ibn Ziyad is playing with the blessed teeth and the lips of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Anas ibn Malik says, stop. What are you doing? I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kiss those blessed lips, kiss those blessed cheeks, kiss the neck that you are just rolling around here on the table next to you. What are you doing? He says, you shut up. Who do you think you are to come and tell me? He says, me, you and your father have no legitimacy. I at least was a prophetic companion. I heard him say that the verse إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا refers to these 5. And he is one of those 5. He's the youngest of those 5. Oh, Ibn Ziyad, what have you done? That's the second companion. Now let's go to the wives. One wife, Salama, who we mentioned earlier, says that it was in my house one of the times that Rasulullah went and put the cloak over the 5. And later on, remember, I don't know if I mentioned it to this gathering or a different gathering, one of the reasons perhaps why al-Baneen did not travel to Karbala, even though she was right around the same age as Sayyidah Zainab, historically speaking, might have been because Imam Hussein saw benefit of keeping her in Medina, that she will be able to argue against those who are the enemies of Ahlul-bayt. So now, once one of those enemies does come and say, she says, do you not read the book of Allah? Says, yes. Doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ? Says, yes. Says, who are these Ahlul Bayt? Says, I don't know. She says, it is my husband, our prophet, Sayyidah Fatima, and Imam Hassan, and Imam Hussein, the one who went to Kufa or to Karbala, and she's waiting for news. The other wife is Aisha herself. One time, remember, Aisha dies a few years or maybe a few months, depending on how the historical analysis is conducted. right before Karbala. So she lived very long after Rasulullah. People came and they asked her, who is this ayah about? Actually, they didn't ask about this ayah. She brought it up herself, which is even more interesting. That the one who you want to include into Ahlul-bayt herself brings up the ayah, not for herself. When she's remembering the person who she went to war with. Who? They asked her about Imam Ali alayhi salam. She said, now you've asked me about the person who is the most beloved person on earth to Rasulullah. How much did she wish that she was the most beloved person to Rasulullah? But by her own admission, Imam Ali was the most beloved. Him and his daughter and their 2 sons were so beloved that he would come into my house, he would come into the other wives' houses, and he would go and ask Allah by dua, these are my lahm, these are my blood, these are my family. Oh Allah, protect them. Whoever hurts them hurts me, whoever annoys them annoys me, etc., etc. All of these that we have mentioned at the beginning of the majlis. From Aisha herself. Therefore, are the wives part of Ahlul-bayt or no? See, here, brothers and sisters, I want to bring up what we had mentioned with regards to Salama's narration. What does Rasulullah say? It says, Allahumma inna ha'ula'i ahlu bayti. Interestingly, in the Arabic grammar, for those of you who know Arabic, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam does not mention the word min. Had he mentioned the word min, it would have meant, oh Allah, these are from my Ahlul Bayt, meaning it's not the entire one. No, what does he say? He says, Allahumma inna ha'ula'i. Only these indeed are the Ahlul Bayt. Wives are asking, can we come in? He says, didn't you hear what I said? I didn't say min. Why are you even asking if you can be in it or not? But Salama, you're in a good place. Aisha, maybe stay away from the Ahlul Bayt. That'd be probably better for you in your akhirah. The other is in the Quran itself. They love to bring up the ayah that Sarah, the wife of Ibrahim, is referred to as Ahlul Bayt. Okay, we can also bring up an ayah as well. First and foremost, she's the cousin of Ibrahim. Even if there's a divorce, she will still be family. Other wives of other prophets, if they get divorced, they're no longer part of the household. That's one problem. Number 2, she's only called Ahlul Bayt, it seems, once she's given birth to a prophetic son. But what's the ayah that we'd like to point out? Asiya. She is part of the family of who? Fir'aun. Quran says that Fir'aun and his Ahl will go to Jahannam. So what? We should go and include the wives over here into this Ahl too? No. This is one of the women of Jannah. She's one of the 4 best women in creation. So you don't want to do it over there, but when it suits you, you want to do it? I don't understand. Help me understand the logic. Then we're going to go to our final of the arguments about the salati ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's interesting. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has excluded rijs, He's made them infallible, all this and that, I find it very hard to believe one ma'soom fights another ma'soom. You come to the first year of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib becoming Khalifa. He strategically moves his capital from Medina to Kufa. He knows enough world history. Civilizations this young, there's going to be a civil war. I don't want the civil war to be in the 2 holy Haramain, Sharifain, Mecca and Medina. No. We're going to go to Kufa. On the way to Kufa, in Basra, he's apprehended and ambushed by 3 companions, at least 3 companions, and multiple soldiers underneath this army. Now you tell me, how is this going to play out in Jannah? Radiyallahu anhu, radiyallahu anha. Hassan and Hussein to them are also radiyallahu anhuma. Talha and Zubayr are also radiyallahu anhuma. This is a very weird Jannah. Hey, alhamdulillah we made it to Jannah, but the whole entire war where I was probably cursing you, I wanted to try to kill you, funny how dunya works, right? This is not the argument of a logical person. This is a sign, this kind of rhetoric is the sign of someone who has not gotten past their cognitive dissonance. A true munsif, meaning a balanced person, A rational person looks at this and they're like, what's going on over here? Something's wrong. So we have our doubts already from Jamal. The final doubt, inshallah, that I'll quickly touch on is irada. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيد اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ. He doesn't say, إِنَّمَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ. All of us say, for example, in sha'Allah. We also say ma sha'Allah. This word sha over here comes from the mashi'a. Mashi'a is different from irada. Mashi'a is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for you. Like for example, He wants Ahlul-bayt to be in hukuma, but what is going to actually happen, that's up to you. That's in your hands. Whether you obey and listen to Rasulullah, or whether you disobey and you just become complacent, that's up to you. But irada, that doesn't have anybody else's say-so mixed into the equation. This is Allah purely by divine fiat. When He says kun fayakun, it happens. How do I know that it's kun fayakun? Let's go to Surah Yasin, ayah number 82. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, إِنَّمَا إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولُ لَهُ. I don't hear anybody. Kun fayakun. Right? And how does the surah end? فَسُبْحَانَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Right? وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Anything, if ever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an irada for something, then what? Then all He does is He says kun fayakun. Now you tell me, does the kun fayakun work? Or does it stop working when it comes to Ahlul-bayt? Why does this problem only come up into the minds when it comes to infallibility of the Ahlul-bayt? It's a sincere question. Nowhere else is the irada questioned. Did it happen, in other ayahs where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the word irada, yuridu, etc., etc.? Well, did it happen? Absolutely happened. Maybe it's because it's in the ghaib and they can't see it. And they're thinking in the lines of what we mentioned a couple of nights ago, kullu bani adam khata'un. Every single one of the children of Adam are sinners, they make mistakes, something like that, right? Maybe their lens are colored by that. But at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said something in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ. To have kept away and keep on keeping away from you all types of filth and impurity, O Ahlul-bayt. وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Now we want to go, and our final point of the discussion is there are different levels of infallibility, brothers and sisters, and I'll conclude. There are three levels of infallibility according to our scholars. There's the lower, there's the middle, and then there's the highest. Okay? The lower one, for example, is what our scholars mention for the likes of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, Bibi Zainab. They have the lower type of infallibility. Right? Why? And what does this mean? That they fulfilled everything in their sharia, they did everything they were supposed to do, but are they at the same level as Rasulullah and Imam Ali and Fatima Zahra? No. They're somewhere, but they're not there. The middle one, our scholars have said, for example, that middle one is the prophets of God, where here even there's a spectrum, right? How many of you know the story in Surah Al-Kahf, where Yusha bin Nun says to Prophet Musa, وَمَا أَنْسَانِيهُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا أَنْ أَذْكُرَ. Shaitan only made me forget to mention it. Yusha bin Nun is a successor of a prophet. We believe that all successors are infallible. But here, when he's tired, when he has a lapse in judgment, Shaitan can make him forget to do what is the best thing. He didn't do anything wrong. This is just in that gradient of middle infallibility. Then you have the highest level of infallibility. Come to Muhammad and Al Muhammad salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een. What is their level of infallibility? Their level is that whatever the best thing in any situation is, that is exactly what they will do. Whatever will make Allah the most happy, no questions asked, they will do it. Whatever it is, in terms of knowledge, in terms of action, in terms of doing something, in terms of not doing something, in terms of saying something, in terms of not saying something, Everything they do is perfect. Everything they do is role model worthy for us. And that's why, brothers and sisters, the final account, because tonight's theme is what did the Ahlul-bayt, the companions and the wives of Rasulullah, what did they have to say about 33? I want to conclude and go into the musibah with this. This goes back to the Ahlul-bayt, but it's not the Imams. This is a young girl by the name of Fatima Sughra. Most likely this is Ruqayya or Sukaina, depending on how we read history. But it happens in Kufa, meaning even if it's Sakina, she's alive, at least for now. By the end, by tomorrow is the 40th, tomorrow is Arba'een. Tomorrow for sure we know that Imam Zain al-Abidin and Sayyida Zainab will reach back to Karbala without this younger sister of Imam Zain al-Abidin, without this daughter of Imam Hussein. What does this Fatima Sughra say? Fatima Sughra says that you people have been reciting a poem, and here is the poem. I'll give you the Arabic, and then I'll give you the translation. نحن قتلنا عليا وبني علي بسيوف هندية ورماح وصبينا نساؤهم سبية ترك وطعناهم فأي نطاح بفيك أيها القاتل الكثكث والثلبة أفتخرت بقتل قوم زكاهم وطهرهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس. A proud one amongst you Kufans decided to go and make the following poem about my family. Who is this? Fatima Sughra. She says, a proud one among you decided to go and make this following poem about my family, saying, we killed Ali, and we also killed his children, and we destroyed them with swords that we imported especially from India. Bisuyufin Hindiya. Hind is India. We brought Indian swords, especially to kill Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, especially to kill his grandsons. They're bragging about where they got their swords from, brothers and sisters. And who's narrating this poem to us? Sakina, most likely. 3 years old, 4 years old. And we captured their women the same way that the Turkish women are captured, with the same humiliation that is shown to Turkish captives. And how fiercely we attacked them with our spikes. Now Fatima says, O you who composed this poem, may your mouth be filled with soil and pebbles, Allah. When she goes to Sham, it seems that this statement is going to come back and haunt her, because now, who are the stones and the pebbles going to be thrown at? Sakina. May your mouth be filled with soil and pebbles. Are you proud of killing a family who God purified and sanctified and is protected from all filth and stain? This is who you're so proud of killing? May Allah fill your mouths with soil and pebbles. It's not too soon after that, after she's outside of the darbar and the bazaar, of Kufa, that she's in the darbar of Kufa in front of Ibn Ziyad. And she hears, she's standing behind her auntie, I can imagine. She hears him say to Zainab, how did you see, how did you think of the whole thing where God killed your brother? And she says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I want to tell you something that Ibn Ziyad's son narrates, young son. Ibn Ziyad, it seems he chose this as a day for bring your child to work day. What day? Where we're going to make fun of the Ahlul-bayt of Rasulullah and make sure that they're seen as a circus, and we're going to poke the head of Imam Hussein, "Come, son, I want you to see how proud your father is today of what he did at work." Goes and puts his son in one of the balconies. Says, "Tell me what you think later when I come back and get you." Says, "Okay." When he comes back to get him, he's shivering. "Why, son? Why are you shivering?" Says, "Because who is this woman that you are talking to? Tell me that." He says, "This is one of the Hashemite women. This woman's name is Zainab." Says, "Why? Why do you ask?" He says, "Because whenever she would open her mouth to address you, that head that was sitting next to you would open its eyes and look at her. Anytime she would speak, the eyes of Imam Hussein alayhi salam would open up and look at her." And this, for me, as a 7, 8-year-old, it creeped me out. It weirded me out. What's happening? Hasn't he been killed long ago? How is he doing this? Ibn Ziyad says, "You're lying." He goes and slaps him and sends him away. But during that darbar, what did he do to the blessed teeth of Imam Hussein? Takes a stick to poke with, pokes the blessed teeth and the lips of Imam Hussein, and then he says, it's sad, he had such nice teeth. Then, I want to take you final words, and then I'm finished, inshallah. I don't have the strength to go. Today, as you know, is a very special night, and even in preparation of this, I've done enough crying, and I don't have it in me. I'm sorry. I want to take you to 3 daughters. 3 daughters who miss their fathers. The first one is Fatima Zahra. Her father is killed and dies a painful death, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when she hears the news from her father, of course, you know that she cries a lot, but then she smiles. Aisha comes and asks her, "Why did you cry and then smile?" "Cried because my father just told me that his death is imminent. But he also told me that, don't worry, Fatima, your trials and tribulations will soon come to an end. Your trial in this difficult life will soon come to an end. You will be the first of my family to join me." Whether it's 3 months, brothers and sisters, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 9 months, whatever the riwayat we want to go with are, this poor 18-year-old Shahida, Fatima Zahra, is killed in a brutal way, and she eventually misses her father and she returns back to him. Second daughter is a daughter by the name of Sukaina, who sees a dream and sees her father in it, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, that, "Oh daughter, soon you will return back to me." She wakes up screaming and crying, "I want my father. Where's my father?" All this time, brothers and sisters, Zainab has been telling her, "Your father's on a journey. Your father's on a journey." Now she says, "I really miss my Baba. Bring him back to me. I just want to see him." Little does she know that he's there. At least his head is there. He's just one building over in the palace of Yazid. Yazid already can't go to sleep because he's dealing with the repercussions of killing Imam Hussein. He can't go to sleep, but he makes an excuse that, "I can't go to sleep because of this shouting and screaming girl." Find out what's wrong. They find out she misses her father. Says, "Okay, so give her the father. Take it." She sees the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and she starts screaming, "Oh, Father, how is there so much blood on your head?" Starts wiping it off, starts cleaning it off. "Who severed your head from your neck? Who severed your head from your body? Who did this to you?" Goes into the corner, is crying. Until Sayyidah Zainab doesn't even hear it anymore, and Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam says, "Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un." My sister has gone back to my father. I ask you, brothers and sisters, one question. How many times does Sayyidah Zainab hear Imam Zain al-Abidin say, "Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un"? How many times? But the final daughter, I promised you 3 daughters. I'm on my final part of the musibah, and I will inshallah conclude. This daughter misses her father, but she has a mission. And so the father comes to her where she is in Kufa when she is younger, and the father says, Zainab, you will be a Sabiya, you will be a captive in the streets. She says, how is that going to be possible when I have 14 brothers? One of them being Abbas. How am I going to be a captive in this city which you rule over right now, father? It says, when that day comes, Zainab, you won't have Abbas, you won't have any of your brothers, not even Hussein, not even Hassan, you won't have me, you will have to bear patiently. But there's one point where they're standing outside of the gate of Sham, outside of the bazaar of Sham, and they won't let them in. She sits down and she says, I cannot move any further. Baba, I need you to come towards me. And then the riwayah says that she stood up and she says, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. This final daughter, as much as she wants to go back and see her father, she has a mission to go and tell what happened at Karbala. Her father comes towards her. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. Wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibun. Wal 'aqibatu lil muttaqin. Raise your hands, brothers and sisters, in dua. These are the kinds of nights, the night of the Arba'een, where our du'as, our hajats are answered. We on the minbar are just as much as in need of your du'as as you are of ours. So let's keep each other in our du'as. Let's recite the following ayah 5 times for our hajats, for our shifa al-marda, and for the ta'jeel of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ لشفاء المرضى لقضاء الحوائج لتعجيل الفرج أما يجيب Oh Allah, we ask you in your holy righteous names, بسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأكرم 10 times, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. إلهي بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها اكشف عنا السوء يا الله. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا كفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار مع محمد وآله الأطهار. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والجالسين والحاضرين والباذلين والشهداء والعلماء نقرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم.